More like... Good morning, pineapples. Rise and freedom. I'm Austin Petersen. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show. This is the For Liberty Network. Ike giving a shits, you giving a shits. Jimmy Joe, Joe Patty, Dad Bod, Bod Baboon, Relax, Iam Groin, BB, For Liberty. Nice to see Nelson 65. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. The audio died, says Nelson. More like what? We can't hear anything. AP jamming in his own world. It's not my fault. I was young. I needed the money. It is much better when you actually have sound effects on the show. I can hear them fine. They sound great to me, but you don't get to hear them because even sometimes when you push a button, it might work, it might not work. More like boo. Oi. Ashley Ann, did I miss another cold open? No, it was just Jimmy Kimmel getting a big applause. Nice to see all of our regulars in the chat. Did everybody click the like button yet? If everybody had, we'd have 59 likes right now. I wish I had 59 likes on the stream. Please click it. We'd love to have you be a regular guest too, so don't forget to click the follow button. We got a great show for you today, per usual. First up, Charlie Kirk. Yes, even in death, Charlie Kirk is still triggering the left. A young Republican in Michigan tried to print a memorial poster for Charlie Kirk at Office Depot. Nothing political, just a vigil. And what do the employees say? Sorry, sir, that's propaganda. Propaganda. Apparently, you can print a Free Palestine poster. No problem. Globalize the Intifada, kill the Jews. Hang all Republicans, shoot them in the face. No problem. Lie about them all. Lie about the right all day long. And they will serve you. But if you are a conservative and plan on doing any praying, you better be wearing your flak vest that day because somebody might shoot you for engaging in speech that doesn't satisfy the left. So we've been here before, all the way back in 2016 on the debate stage. I said it loud and clear. Freedom of association means the right to say no. If you don't have that, then yes, a Jewish baker would be forced to bake a cake for a Nazi. That was my line. It lit up the internet then, and it matters even more now. We're going to break that down in the A1 block today on the show. Then we're going to roll into A2. Big Tech finally admits what we've been saying for years. They censored us at the government's request. Google and YouTube say they're going to reinstate permanently banned accounts, the ones that they vaporized over COVID and election misinformation. They admit that the Biden administration leaned on them. That's called jawboning, and it's a great conversation in light of the story of Jimmy Kimmel. Jawboning, censorship by proxy. Is it unconstitutional? Yes. But now they want us to come crawling back like nothing's happened. Not a chance. We're going to unpack it all this morning at 7:30 a.m. Central Time on the Wake Up America show. At 8 o'clock Central this morning, the great Judge Andrew Napolitano will join us. His brand new column is a masterpiece on free speech. He reminds us why there is no such thing as hate speech under the First Amendment, why government can't do indirectly what it cannot do directly, and why projecting offensive speech is the whole point. Judges always fire. You don't want to miss it. Judge Andrew Napolitano at 8 a.m. Central. Then at 8:30 a.m. this morning, we're going to have Adam Coleman. He's the founder of Wrong Speak Publishing, fresh from his 2-week vacation in Greece. Joins us to talk about Jimmy Kimmel's suspension and return. I mean, comedy used to be a front line of free speech and expression. Now it's a weapon for one side. Kimmel made a nasty crack about Charlie Kirk. The FCC leans on Disney, and suddenly late night comedy becomes the battleground for free speech. Adam Coleman's going to break it down this morning. And then today's breakfast theater, I'm really excited about it. I hope that we get to unlock it because if we can afford the $100, then we will have Guillermo from the Jimmy Kimmel show on the Wake Up America show today. His bright, shiny red Mexican ass will be on the show. Guillermo himself, full of tequila, full of love, and full of hypocrisy. He'll be on the show today. You're not going to want to miss Guillermo. So, quick reminder for the audience. If we hit $75 in Rumble rants or shop purchases, if Siggy's mom decides to go on a little shopping spree this morning, we will unlock today's mini documentary. That's the 5-minute mini documentary that you watch as a treat instead of commercials when we go to get our guests in the second hour. If we hit $100 raised by the end of the show today, then we will unlock Guillermo on the Wake Up America show today, and you get to hear from him and his take on the Jimmy Kimmel will he, won't he. So drop Rumble rants, start them early and often. $1, $5, $10, 20, 50, anything that you guys feel like this morning to help get that bonus content unlock began. And once we hit 75, that will start the mini documentary. And then phase 2 unlock is Guillermo on the Wake Up America show.
I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man.
Bullshit.
I don't...
Bullshit. Where's my bullshit button?
Anything funny about it? I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do.
Well, you had no illusions that you were going to change anyone's mind, Jimmy, and no minds have been changed by this. Everybody still believes what they believe.
Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual.
It was never my intention to blame any group. You said specifically, and I quote, that MAGA has been trying to blame anyone but themselves for a person that was obviously one of them. You lied, Jimmy. You lied, and you're lying again.
That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I have many friends and family members on the other side who I love and remain close to, even though we don't agree on politics at all. I don't think the murderer who shot Charlie Kirk represents anyone. This was a sick person who believed violence was a solution, and it isn't. Ever. And also selfishly.
Tyler Robinson represents every authoritarian in history who, when they cannot win the debate, when they cannot win the argument, they use violence. How many times? I don't know. I cannot tell you how many times I have been in debates with people, and I've debated conservatives, I've debated libertarians, I've debated Republicans, I've debated Democrats, I've debated socialists, communists, what have you. And when the socialist starts to lose the debate, when the communists, when the leftists, when the Democrats starts to lose the debate, almost always do they want it to come to blows, right? You can't say the N-word without threat of violence. The left, violence is the language of the left. So Jimmy, Jimmy will lie and say that he didn't pin it on a group, even though he absolutely did. He called the shooter MAGA, one of us, right? Now he's going to lie and say, oh, I don't think that he belongs to any group. Well, I do. I think that he's the type of, he sounds like a Jimmy Kimmel fan to me, Jimmy. You know what the great thing is about podcasting? There's no FCC to take away my license. You lying sack of Jimmy. Just a quick reminder too, little house cleaning stuff. The Rumble bot wasn't working yesterday in the Rumble chat, but it is working today. And I'd like to offer a challenge to all of our listeners on Rumble this morning to use the clip tool whenever you guys find a part of the show, a 30-second clip, a 45, a 60, all the way up to 240 seconds. Whenever you find a clip that you particularly like, you can just type in !clip, and that will automatically do the last 30 seconds. You can also do !clip space and then the number of seconds all the way up to 240 seconds. And I'd like to issue a challenge to you all today. Let's see how many great clips of the Wake Up America show that you all can create and then upload them to X. Now, here's what I think you're going to think. I'm saying you're going to clip a clip. You're going to get the URL of the clip. And then you're going to think, oh, I'm just going to go post that URL on X. Aha, but here's where the challenge part comes in. The challenge is for you to actually download the clip onto your computer from that URL, which it has a download button on that page, and then upload it to your X account natively, tag me and tag the guest, maybe Judge Knapp or Adam Coleman, tag us, and we will repost that, and we will help to blow up your X account. So that's the challenge today. As many awesome, fun, funny clips of the Wake Up America show today from as many of our friends. And Barney Styles, if you type testing clip 35 like that, it's not going to work. You have to type in !clip, all one word, and then space bar, and then the number of seconds. And that's how you get that clip. If you just type in !clip, that should do it. If you type in iClip, it won't work, Barney. I see you struggling over there, buddy. Just like this. Moink. And look at that. You get a beautiful little URL in the chat. See? And then you just click on that, open it up, download the clip, upload it to X, say something about the clip, make a nice little witty caption, tag me, and I will repost that clip for you. There you go. See, Ike giving a shits. You're doing it. You're doing it, Peter. You're believing, Peter. Bangarang, Peter. Time to move on. All right. So, free speech, right? Let me tell you this story about this kid in Kalamazoo, Michigan. 20-year-old kid, head of the Kalamazoo Young Republicans. He walks into Office Depot last week. He's got a simple request. Print a poster for a vigil honoring Charlie Kirk. It said the legendary Charlie Kirk, 1993 to 2025. Pretty straightforward, black and white photo. It wasn't a political flyer. It wasn't a manifesto. It wasn't a bumper sticker. It was just a memorial. And the staff at Office Depot, the so-called associates, they refused. They said it was propaganda. There's video of it. We played it last week. I think this topic bears revisiting because people are now going back and combing Charlie Kirk's quotes, saying things like he wanted to overturn the Civil Rights Act. They can't find him saying that. So here's a clip for you. It's time for us to overturn the Civil Rights Act. How's that? After I die, they'll play that a lot. I hope that you do. And I hope that you guys won't be cowards after they assassinate me. Blow my head, my brains up all over the wall next time I go to give a speech. And I hope that you guys stand up for what's right, and that's freedom of association. We're going to talk about that this morning. Thank you to Quest Fanning. We appreciate you very much for that. Looks like somebody went and got a little grifty over at the grift shop this morning and decided to, maybe not. I was wrong. Okay, we've raised $1 I believe, of the $75 and $100 bonus content goals. I have to go check and make sure I'm right about that. We're going to talk about freedom of association this morning. And that video went viral. We played it on the show last week when it came out. Office Depot Corporate, they were doing the kind of PR two-step. All right, they fire the employee, they issue the boilerplate apology, they retrain the staff. Meanwhile, Attorney General Pam Bondi comes in, charging in like some prosecutor in high heels saying, we can prosecute for that. We can, over refusing to print a poster. Hate speech, free speech. I don't know if I really go like Pam Bondi, not necessarily getting the message here of what we're trying to accomplish here, right? So Dad Bod Baboon says he's feeling kind of pregnant. Might eat a bottle of Tylenol because Trump said no. I literally saw pregnant women taking Tylenol pills yesterday as a way to own the cons. And if you know what, we got to be careful about this, guys. You might think, oh yeah, make your babies tarded. But what if they all turn out like Elon Musk and we get an army of libturds instead of based libertarians? Dad Bod Baboon, thank you very much for that. By the way, we're at $6 raised for the bonus content so far. That's right. Keep it coming, guys. Calville says, cool clips. Does this work on every Rumble Live? Only my Rumble Live and ones that have the Rumble bot. So this is a functionality I pay a little bit each month for so that you guys can cut clips. You can talk to Rumblebot, and Rumblebot tells you stories and we'll answer questions for you in the chat. So, and tells you where our Discord is. So in 2016, when I ran for president, I said the government has no business telling you that who you can associate with. Gary Johnson was up there mumbling about utilities and fairness, and I cut right through it. I said, if you don't have the right to refuse service, then a Jewish baker could be forced to bake a cake for a Nazi wedding, right? That line made headlines, Reddit lit up, people got it instantly. Freedom of association means the freedom to say no. We were talking especially about the masterpiece Bake the Cake decision, where a Christian baker was being forced by the government to engage in speech that went against their religious liberty. And when it comes to discussing the Civil Rights Act, there are many different angles from this. It's not just cut and dry. It's not just about public accommodations. It's also about private accommodations. It's not just about the government not being able to discriminate. It's about private companies not being able to discriminate and what private property really means in regards to businesses. And it's not a hypothetical. This is a real world scenario. It's not just cake bakers. It's also print shops. It's wedding photographers. It's web designers. It's a kid trying to honor Charlie Kirk, right? The great Ludwig von Mises understood this. He lived through the real rise of the Nazis. He said that there are two kinds of discrimination: voluntary and then government imposed. Voluntary discrimination, it may be ugly. It may not always be ugly, right? But it is free choice in the private market. And when people make dumb choices in the market, the penalty is built in. They lose business. They lose customers. They pay a price for their prejudice. But when the government steps in, of course, that's not voluntary anymore. That's power. And of course, power gets abused. When the Nazis wanted to crush Jewish businesses, they didn't rely on private boycotts. They wrote the laws. They enforced them with violence. And millions of people, tens of millions of people were killed trying to pull their claws out of Europe. This is the danger. So yeah, the Office Depot employees were wrong. They paid the price. They got fired. But the government, it's not the government's job to fire them, right? That's the market at work. And you're going to hear me today say some things that might sound like hypocrisy when we're talking about Jimmy Kimmel. But I'm begging you today to go with me today to entertain an idea without necessarily accepting it, and watch me play devil's advocate with the judge when he defends Jimmy Kimmel's free speech. And we're going to talk about game theory. If anyone has seen the movie A Beautiful Mind with John Nash, we're going to discuss a little bit some of these concepts, strategies for liberty, not just the philosophy and principles of liberty. I've read it all. I know it all. I've seen it all. Frankly, at this time, all I'm really interested in for the most part is not another lecture on what Ludwig von Mises has said. He said hypocritically. But I want to know the strategy to fight for this liberty. It's easy for us, for the people in academia or in the think tank world or the professional philosophers, political philosophers, to sit back and talk about what is the right thing to do, but what can you actually do when you're underneath this scenario? That's why I think that the conversation with Adam Coleman that's going to happen today at 8:30 a.m. Central is going to be a fantastic discussion. You don't want to miss that one, because he and I are really going to get into the tactics for liberty, and then Judge Napolitano will, of course, to the philosophy of it. But so Charlie Kirk himself, he understood this argument. Charlie was very strongly in favor of freedom of association. And this is why the left has been trying to paint him as against the Civil Rights Act. Because if you are truly for true freedom of association, then you're standing against a portion of the Civil Rights Act. Now, when we say overturn the Civil Rights Act, abolish the Civil Rights Act, do we mean that we should allow the government to discriminate against minorities in this country? No. If you abolished one of the Civil Rights Acts, you would accomplish that. But what we're specifically talking about, if we want to be precise, is Title II of the Civil Rights Act, which forced places of business to be considered public accommodations that required them to service preferred groups. And when I say preferred groups, what we're talking about, the way that the government terms it is disaffected groups, or what is the term that that the government likes to use for this? These are people who are part of if you're over, essentially everyone but white males under the age of 40 qualifies for this. What do they call them? They're minority groups, disaffected groups. I call them preferred groups by the government. You're LGBT, you're old, you're gay, you're black, you're lesbian, whatever it is, you're anything but a male under the age of 40 qualifies as not being protected by the Civil Rights Act. Relaxing McGowan says black people, yes, they're protected classes. Thank God. I do a double shot of espresso in the morning so that it will like clean me out. So I don't have to go poo during the show. So but then I'm like sitting around thinking, man, maybe I need some more caffeine. Protected classes. Dad bod. Talking about protected classes here on the show. So protected classes. That's the problem, is that we have protected classes. And guess who the protected classes are? 4 years ago, I joined the ranks of the protected class here in the United States. Right? And the protected class, what are the protected classes in the United States? What are the protected classes? Include age, ancestry. Wow, thank you. As a son of the American Revolution, I imagine I would be a protected class in my own country, right? I gave him my check last night. Age, ancestry, color, disability, ethnicity, gender identity or expression, genetic information, HIV/AIDS status, military status, national origin, pregnancy, race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, or any other basis under the law. What are the 9 protected classes in the United States? The untouchables, or let's call them what they are, the preferred classes of the government in our society. The preferred classes, the federal law lists national race or race, national or ethnic origin, color. Wait a minute, that's Canada's. I want the protected classes in the United States. I got the wrong list there. Sorry, going on the fly here. Race, color, religion, sex, including transgender status, sexual orientation, and pregnancy. National origin, age, 40 or older, disability or genetic information. So congratulations, if you are a white male, if you're at least 40 years old or older, then you become a member of the preferred class in the United States. Congratulations. Yes, Dadbod says, oh, that reminds me, I got my Jasmine Rising for Liberty and Revere's Rebel Roast. Both are absolutely delicious. Thank you, sir. Are you old? Are you old? If you're old, then you're a protected class in the United States. But how is it that we live in a country? I could complain more 4 years ago, but now I'm a protected class, so I'm feeling very good about it. If you're a protected class, you're not going to want to get rid of protected classes, right? But who is not a member of a protected class in the United States? Let's grok it this morning. Let's see if Grok can get the answer on this one. Grok is usually the fastest. Let's see. Who are not considered a part of a protected class in the United States according to civil rights laws? Question mark. Let's see. And I want it to give me a quick answer. So rather than sit around and let it to think, here we go. In the United States, civil rights laws identify specific groups. You get rights because you're a member of a group in the United States. And it's to prevent discrimination based on characteristics, right? So the laws include Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it goes on, defining protected classes such as race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, and genetic information. Individuals who do not fall within these specified categories are not considered a part of a protected class under federal civil rights laws. For example, political beliefs or affiliations, those aren't protected classes. Socioeconomic status, income level, not a protected class. Personal appearance, characteristics like height, weight, or general appearance. But wait, that's coming. There has been a lot of pushback on the fatphilic movement in this country. But believe me that if this country takes a slide to the left, if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez becomes president of the United States in the next election, if her and Gavin Newsom are on a ticket together, then I promise you that there will be a move to add being fat to the list of protected classes in this country. Lifestyle choices, the gay ones count, but hobbies, personal interests, or non-religious affiliations are not typically protected. Sexual orientation and gender identity on the federal level, it's not added. Some states have done this. those are not uniformly protected under federal civil rights law, but some federal rulings, court rulings, they do cover it. So state and local laws might expand protections beyond the federal laws, adding things like marital status or even some political activities might make you a part of a protected class. But there it is. And so this is my problem with the Civil Rights Act in this country. In order to end discrimination, they reached into the pockets, they reached into the private property of people who own businesses and said, you must serve blacks at the lunch counter. You must force hotel rooms to take blacks in this country. And in order to try and to end that form of discrimination in this country, they trampled all over property rights. So that now if it started with making it so that blacks could stay at hotels and eat at lunch counters, and it's ending now where it is. The slippery slope we have slid down and arrived at the location where we now force the Christian to bake the LGBT wedding cake. It's a mess.
Senator Goldwater, we have another question here from some of our listeners. You voted against the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Would you do so today? And what is your position now on the proposed Voting Rights Act?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, if the same two items remained in the bill that caused me to think it unconstitutional at that time remained in any bill today, I would have to vote against it. This isn't something, by the way, that you make a determination on from the standpoint of politics. I have no question that had I voted for that bill, I might have softened some of the Negro opposition to my candidacy, but I'm not foolish enough to think that I would have won over the NAACP. I have to live with myself, and I took an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution. And this was the only civil rights bill in 12 years that I couldn't vote for. But it did contain
Gary Goldwater. Ask yourselves how many other shows you could turn on here today, podcasts or mainstream or legacy media television shows that you could turn on today and hear Barry Goldwater be played in the context of this discussion. Now ask yourself if the valuable content that you're watching here on the Wake Up America show is worth a Rumble rant to unlock the bonus content, and do it right now. No one else is going to play Barry Goldwater for you this morning and give you this kind of an in-depth, nuanced discussion while we're talking this morning about free speech, private property, civil rights, protected classes, and your right not to be forced to bake the Nazi wedding cake. Only the Wake Up America show. Only this show. Relaxing McGroin says, I love the term Negro opposition. Look at that. Notice that the tactics of the left haven't really changed much. There's the swastika. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Barry Goldwater, go home with the swastika. Why is it always the left? You never see the Republicans or the conservatives walking around with swastikas. But the left, they're always putting swastikas everywhere. It's like they're telling on themselves.
What I remember most about the 64 campaign was the 64 Civil Rights Act. My dad had been a Republican all his life. And in 64, he switched. And he voted for Johnson, and he became a Democrat because Goldwater was against the 64 Civil Rights Act.
Are you concerned, perhaps, about the Democrats taking advantage of this?
After Lyndon Johnson, the biggest faker in the United States, having opposed the Civil Rights Act for all the years of his life, this is the phoniest individual that ever came around. Did you get that?
Thank you, Senator.
Lyndon Johnson, a Southern senator.
This country would have been off so much better off if we had elected Barry Goldwater, for the love of Pete.
Long been ambivalent about civil rights legislation, made big efforts to complete an agenda that Kennedy had not been able to complete.
My fellow Americans, I am about to sign into law the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I want to take this occasion to talk to you.
The 1954 Supreme Court decision against segregation in public schools sent a signal to black Americans that the highest court in the land had given the seal of approval to what we were fighting for racial integration. Well, with the schools, there was a 10-year period when the country didn't follow through on it.
You have said, I believe, that we have no right to tell the southern states what they must do about school integration. I can't understand this statement. Do you mean to say the Supreme Court decision is null and void?
No, the Supreme Court decision is not necessarily the law of the land. The Constitution still is. They interpreted by that action that it was wrong to have segregation. Now, they didn't spell out what was to be done.
Conservatives did not feel that it was something that the federal government should legislate on.
What the president has
no
proposed.
shit, right? But what they want to do is they want to conflate. They want to conflate the private versus the public. They want to conflate the mandatory with the voluntary. And this is what this documentary, of course, is doing.
In this bill is a law which will eliminate one of the most embittering forms of...
Look who's dad. Look at daddy, everybody. You know what he did? He's Robert RFK Jr., his wife there, she was taking Tylenol. That's how we got our Health and Human Secretary Service. I took Tylenol, and that's how I ended up like this. Get him, Dad.
Racial discrimination. The denial of free access to places of public accommodation. Restaurants, stores, hotels, lunch counters, and other establishments of service or amusement.
I will never vote for a public accommodations clause in any civil rights bill because I think it's unconstitutional. I think it tampers with the right of assembly, the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the freedom of property.
Yes, amazing. Why aren't you putting... I love these documentaries are so good at making you hate Republicans and conservatives. They're fantastic. Mr. Conservative Barry Goldwater's opposition to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Dun, 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 dun. The Nazi Republican, he hates blacks.
In my home state, we have very few public places that remain segregated by pointing out to business people that it is morally wrong to practice discrimination, and it's also economically bad.
Listen.
This type of approach, while I know it's time-consuming, it is having its effect, will have its effect, and I think it will achieve what we want.
Like what year?
He was right.
In 1967, in 1979, in 1983. Is it okay during the intervening times that a black kid in a high school baseball team can't stay at a motel?
Yeah.
This is the basic disagreement.
Yeah, if the black kid walks in and he's smells of marijuana and you like a nice, quiet, drug-free hotel, then yeah, you can. You can say, bye-bye, black kid with your drugs. Yeah, get out. Get them, get out, right? You walk in wearing a suit, you look nice, it's a family thing. Oh, well, I'll take your money, black man. How's that? Look, I think you should be able to discriminate because you stink or not being able to wear shoes or something. How about just it's private property? My business is my business. Mi casa is mi casa, su casa is su casa, and such as it is. Que sera, sera.
Between the Negro community and Senator Goldwater. They don't think he's prejudiced. They don't think he's a racist. I don't think he's a racist. But they can't go along with a man who says we ought to let what's going on in Mississippi be settled by Mississippi, and the federal government ought to knit or do something else. This we can't take.
On the eve of the convention, 40,000 people, half of them Negroes, demonstrate against Goldwater in the largest civil rights demonstration since the March on Washington last summer.
I am compelled to urge Negroes and all people of goodwill to vote against him. His election would be a tragedy and certainly suicidal almost for the nation and the world.
Nobody knows, or none of us knew, what Senator Goldwater's motives were. We had to take him at his word that this was a constitutional, a philosophical objection.
Had to take it at his word because
people respected that there could be a difference of opinion, but he was wrong. He was just plain wrong. And because he was wrong, he made his party wrong, and he made the Democrats right.
There you go. There you go. We don't want any black votes, they say. Very civil rights voting. Your thoughts? You can send us a text at 573-319-1586. Send us a text at 573-319-1586 with your thoughts on this or more. If you want to contact the Wake Up America show, we'd love to have you be a regular guest. If you click the follow button on the Wake Up America show, you'll get a notification whenever we go live, which is every 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. We've raised a hefty $6 towards bonus content this morning. If we hit $75 or $100, then that will unlock our mini documentaries, and we will have Guillermo from the Jimmy Kimmel show here on the Wake Up America show. So make sure that you guys keep those Rumble rants coming in. Ask yourself if you guys would see Barry Goldwater and have this level of in-depth discussion about the Civil Rights Act, American history, and in context of Charlie Kirk and the assassination, as well as Jimmy Kimmel. And now we talk about YouTube, and ask yourself if it's worth a Rumble rant or a purchase from the Grift Shop. It absolutely is. So let me remind you all that the Wake Up America show is sponsored in part by our friends over at the Expat Money Summit. I will be on a panel at the Expat Money Summit. Hope that you guys will sign up. If you go to expatmoneysummit.com and you sign up for the summit in 2025, then you guys will be able to watch me speaking on a VIP panel. Go to expatmoneysummit.com. You can sign up for free, or you could buy upgraded packages. This year, they're going to be talking about Latin America, specifically what Trump's plans for Latin America are. And we're going to be talking about Javier Milei and passport statuses, having a second home in another country. If you sign up for the summit at expatmoneysummit.com, I will be speaking there. If you guys want to buy the upgraded package and get past the free level, then use my name, AUSTIN. That's Austin, AUSTIN, and they'll give you a 20% discount over there at expatmoneysummit.com. There we go. I need to get my name on the website. There you go, the expatmoneysummit.com.
Hey, my name is Mikkel Thorpe, and I'm the founder and CEO of Expat Money. I've lived and worked around the globe for over 25 years as an expat, and my mission is simple: to help people like you create freedom, security, and opportunity through international diversification. Right now, the world feels more unstable than ever. Governments are printing money like mad, geopolitical tensions are rising, and taxes are only going in one direction: up. Meanwhile, everyday people are losing confidence in the system that once promised them safety and prosperity. That's why you need a plan B. Not someday, now. Your plan B should include a second residency, international investment strategies, and the ability to legally move yourself and your wealth across borders. But where to start? That's exactly why I created the Expat Money Online Summit, now in its 5th year. This year's event is focused entirely on a region on the rise, Latin America. This free online event brings together dozens of the region's top experts who will walk you through the legal and practical side of crafting your plan B south of the border. For the first time ever, this year's summit will be a 3-day event taking place over the weekend of October 10th to the 12th. During the summit, you'll learn how to secure legal residencies and second citizenships in Latin America, where the best real estate and business opportunities are in the region in 2025, and how to take action now to build a freer, more sovereign life for you and your family. And yes, access to the entire summit is completely free. I spent years doing boots-on-the-ground research across Latin America, so you don't have to. And let me tell you, this information is worth thousands of dollars, as the time of the experts presenting doesn't come cheap. But I want to make it accessible to as many freedom seekers as possible. This is the single best starting point if you're serious about your plan B. Click the button below to reserve your free ticket to the biggest and most important expat event of the year. Let's get you on the path to a freer, richer, more secure future today.
Here we go. Thank you very much. You guys talking about octoroons in the chat? What's wrong with you guys? Thanks so much for tuning into the Wake Up America show. We're glad and thankful to have you guys here. Don't forget to keep those Rumble rants rolling so we can unlock that sweet, sweet bonus content today. We're talking this morning about the Civil Rights Act. We're talking about baking the cake. We're talking about free speech. We're talking about Jimmy Kimmel. All right. We're talking about YouTube. You know, we've been saying for years that big tech was doing the bidding of the Biden administration. Well, of course, turns out that we were absolutely correct. Here's a free speech issue. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, back when it was Twitter, they were all acting like appendage of the Democratic Party, right? The Democrats worked very hard to ensure that they could force private businesses to serve blacks at their lunch counters. And they also worked very hard to make sure that they forced private businesses to ban conservatives and libertarians and Republicans from platforms. So forgive me if I don't think it's, oh, what about the widow black people? What if we just have to protect the widow black people? No, you don't care about anyone but your own protected class. You don't care about anyone else. Don't listen to the left when they talk about free speech. Don't listen. Don't listen to them. Don't when they cry their crocodile tears. It's all lies, damn lies, and fake statistics. Am I right? Right. Absolutely. Oh, Andy Opperman, what are you doing, son? What you say? There you went shopping to the shop. Of course you did. What you say? And it's all for the best. Of course it is. I've been so wrong for so long. Only try to live my life. Because when the truth came out and he went to the shop, he helped to unlock the content. When I become a podcast star, I'll be living so large. I'll do anything for you. What you say? But you only gonna unlock the bonus content? Well, of course you did. Nobody. You guys are supposed to start singing along. Come on, we got this live studio audience here. Yeah, you clap and cheer now, and I look like an idiot. That's very nice of you, Andy. Thank you very much. So we put that into the total, plus 62.29. That means we're at, cha-ching, $68 raised towards the $75 and $100 bonus content goals. So close. Once we hit 75, you'll unlock the mini documentary. Google has admitted they weren't just enforcing their own policies during COVID. They were pressured by the White House. The left doesn't believe in free speech. Now they're all crying these crocodile tears about Jimmy Kimmel. He's such a hero. He's such a martyr. We can't believe it. No, they worked overtime to ban conservatives from being able to use their free speech on YouTube. But here, when Jimmy Kimmel cries,
make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I have many friends and family members on the other side who I love and remain close to, even though we don't agree on politics at all. I don't think the murderer who shot Charlie Kirk represents anyone. This was a sick person who believed violence was a solution, and it isn't. Ever.
The MAGA gang is desperately trying to characterize the kid, this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk, as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from him. That's what Jimmy Kimmel said. Excuse me, Jimmy.
And also person who gets a lot of threats. I get many ugly and scary threats against my life, my wife, my kids, my coworkers because of what I choose to say. And I know those threats don't come from the kind of people on the right who I know and love. So that's what I wanted to say on that subject. But I don't want to make this about me because, and I know this is what people say when they make things about them, but I really don't. This show is not important. What is important is that we get to live in a country that allows us to have a show like this.
Ah, yes. They clap. They. Oh, yes, Jimmy Kimmel. Yes, it's important that we have free speech. You liars, bloviators, bullshitters. The Biden White House cracked down on people's free speech, officially using the government to ban people from being able to speak out on platforms like the one we're talking on right now. Thank God for Rumble. As many of you know, I was not banned from YouTube, but I was demonetized from YouTube for having opinions and speaking like I am speaking right now. This is why we are a Rumble first community here on the Wake Up America show. Arvold says, what's important is we don't get shot for speech. Exactly. Thank you. Womp womp. That is important. Bloviate me. All right, so now after destroying careers, silencing voices, handing out digital death penalties, they've suddenly decided, that now that Trump has won, YouTube has decided to give people their accounts back. Steve Bannon, Dan Bongino, Sebastian Gorka all got shut down on these platforms. And now thousands of Americans, people, big Jimmy Kimmel supporters, they want us to believe that they're champions of free speech. This is the abusive boyfriend routine. Punch you in the face, then show up with flowers saying, baby, I've changed. It's different now. You're in power. It's different now that I'm not in control of the government. So what exactly are they saying here? What are they offering? YouTube says if you are banned for repeated violations of their COVID or election integrity policies that don't exist anymore, you might get reinstated. Might. They're not guaranteeing monetization, right? They're dangling the carrot saying, come back to us, peasant. We'll consider letting you exist again. Don't do it. Don't fall for it. This is like a tyrant king exiling you for 10 years and then saying, you may now re-enter the kingdom, but you must kiss the ring first, right? No. Free men don't beg tyrants for permission slips to speak. Let's stick with Rumble. Many of you who have been around during the 3-year period that the Wake Up America show has been live, now more than 3 years that this show has been live, remember that some of you may have even been subscribers to the Wake Up America show, monthly subs through YouTube at the time, and then you got it all of a sudden. It's embarrassing. Everybody gets an email saying your subscription to the Wake Up America show has been canceled, and they don't tell them why, and they don't even tell you why that they do such things. But here over on Rumble, we now have a connection. Rumble's not going to break the connection of the subscriptions between yourself and myself. You could support the Wake Up America show all you like, and thank you for doing so. So let's not go back to YouTube. Let's stand up for free speech even when it's unpopular. Unless, and I think it is important for me to say this very clearly, and it is important for you to entertain a thought without necessarily accepting it. Unless the speech is of someone with whom we disagree politically, it is with someone who wants us dead, it is with someone who advocates that conservatives should be banned, censored, someone who advocated for us to lose our YouTube platforms. We cannot stand up for the free speech of those people. Those people must all be deported, stripped of their citizenship status, and forced to walk the plank. And only if at the end of the plank, with our sword, our rapier, our rapist wit we use. I don't think that's how it is. She said you need a therapist. I thought she said the rapist. So more jokes on this than Jimmy Kimmel's show. And only at the end of the plank, with the crocodile circling and the tick-tock of the clock in its belly, at the end of the plank, can that fellow American recant and say, you know what? I was wrong. I've learned my lesson. I will no longer advocate for the loss of, I will stand up for the free speech of my enemies. And only And only under that scenario will we let them stay and keep their citizenship and stay as faithful and patriotic Americans. If they don't, then off the plank with you. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Make sure you click that like button. Judge Andrew Napolitano is going to come back, and you know what? I think we're actually going to have a few disagreements. It's going to be great. I'm playing the bonus content now since you've unlocked it. We've got to hit phase 2, 25 more bucks, and we'll have Guillermo from Jimmy Kimmel on the show today. His big red shiny Mexican butt will be on the show, and we'll all have a good laugh. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show, and we're on the 4 Liberty Network at 4libertynetwork.com. That's our Discord server. Head on over there.
As policymakers aim to reduce opioid prescribing for the 14th year in a row, they are promoting a search for non-addictive pain treatment alternatives. Although medical marijuana is increasingly viewed as a leading candidate, its advocates tend to grossly exaggerate its potential to replace opioid analgesics. That hyperbole threatens the welfare of pain patients, contributes to the backlash against marijuana legalization, and could undermine other forms of drug liberalization. A study published last July in the journal Pain epitomizes this tendency. University of Pittsburgh pain specialist Ajay D. Wasan and his colleagues present what seems to be compelling evidence of marijuana's ability to broadly treat chronic pain. Unfortunately, the study has a methodological flaw that renders its main conclusion meaningless. For a technical discussion of this flaw, please see the letter to the editor I wrote with Chad D. Collis and the author's response. Wasan et al. Used an innovative statistical technique to compare chronic pain patients who received marijuana recommendations with chronic pain patients who received standard pharmaceuticals, including opioids. They found that the marijuana patients reported significantly higher reductions in pain, but the two groups were much too different to justify any conclusions from that comparison. Although the author's statistical technique can often make causal comparisons between largely different groups, the method still requires minimal similarities between the populations. In this study, 432 of the 440 subjects in the marijuana group, 98.1%, had a diagnosis for neuropathic pain, one of the few conditions marijuana is known to alleviate. By contrast, 1,103 of the 814 subjects in the standard treatment group, 14.8%, suffered from neuropathic pain. The upshot is that just 8 patients in the marijuana group were statistically weighted to represent 6,911 individuals in the standard care group, the ones with other forms of chronic pain. In other words, 1.8% of the marijuana group was used to model patients without neuropathic pain, who accounted for 85.1% of the standard treatment group. That selection bias fatally compromises the study's findings. Wasan et al. Responded to this critique by highlighting that they used pain detect categories to quantify neuropathic pain instead of International Classification of Diseases, 10th revision, ICD-10 codes. But as we explained in our letter with the study data, pain detect poorly predicts neuropathic pain severity. To illustrate our main point, consider 2 different groups of people with arm pain. One group is treated with hard casts, while the other gets nothing. If almost everyone in the group treated with casts had a broken arm, we'd expect that group to eventually report improved outcomes. But if the vast majority of the other group is suffering not from fractures but from burns or abrasions, we wouldn't expect casting to reliably help that group. It would be reckless to conclude, based on a comparison of those 2 groups, that casts should be used to heal arms that aren't broken. Statistical malpractice is common within the medical marijuana literature. Academic advocates have long pushed marijuana to treat conditions such as anorexia, ADHD, autism, and even cancer. They used initial, low-quality research to promote state-level legalization of medical marijuana to treat these conditions across the United States. But more recent reviews reveal that marijuana's medical applications are much narrower than the wide range of conditions that can justify a doctor's recommendation under many state laws. When it comes to chronic pain, marijuana does have some promise in treating discomfort caused by neuropathy and fibromyalgia, but attempting to use it for conditions that require powerful narcotics is apt to harm patients. The push for pain reliever substitutes comes amid continuing federal actions to artificially reduce the supply of prescription opioids through manufacturing quotas. Those restrictions have caused a shortage of opioid analgesics, leaving doctors unable to find appropriate pain medications for their patients. Because over-the-counter medications like acetaminophen, Tylenol, and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, like aspirin and ibuprofen cause major organ damage when used for prolonged periods, the lack of an adequate opioid supply has made it difficult for doctors to find safe drugs for chronic pain. Contrary to popular belief, opioids have very few negative effects on the body when taken as directed. If a marijuana derivative could work as an all-purpose pain reliever, it might be the only reasonable opioid replacement for chronic pain. But the evidence seems to be stacked against marijuana's effectiveness at treating pain, except in limited circumstances. Prohibitionists have long argued that there is insufficient scientific evidence to justify legalizing marijuana for medical or recreational use. Studies with glaring methodological flaws, like Wasson et al. Series, provide them with ammunition to shoot down the entire body of cannabis research. This situation is especially frustrating because there is legitimate evidence supporting marijuana's therapeutic benefits for some conditions. When advocates oversell weak studies, they risk undermining stronger evidence and sabotaging future liberalization efforts, especially for other drugs. Prohibitionists argue that medical marijuana is a strategy aimed at achieving de facto recreational access, and they have a point. The evidence indicates that marijuana can't treat most of the conditions that justify referrals under state laws, which are often written so broadly that basically anyone who wants marijuana can gain access. Medical marijuana advocates should demand better research. As the war on opioid prescribing continues, they should not promote inadequate substitutes to treat pain. Although cannabis derivatives do have a place in medicine, promoting marijuana as a panacea hurts patients and undermines the credibility of drug policy reformers.
I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way.
I wonder why people thought that he was pointing a finger. It couldn't have been because he pointed a finger and said the MAGA gang is desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them. I wonder where people got the idea that he was pointing a finger. I'll tell you one man who knows how to point a finger. His name's Judge Andrew Napolitano. If you've ever seen any of his shows, he's got the Judging Freedom. And now he's here to judge me here on the Wake Up America show. Judge Andrew Napolitano to talk about free speech, how it's not given to us by government. It's recognized by government, a natural right that pre-exists the state. That's not my line. That's straight from Jefferson, Madison, and the founders. And who says it better than Judge Andrew Napolitano, the host of the Judging Freedom podcast and author of many books and one of the greatest lights in my life of my intellectual journey towards libertarianism. Judge Andrew Napolitano joining us live right now on the Wake Up America show. All rise. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning, Austin. Thank you for that generous, over-the-top introduction.
Thank you, Judge.
You know, this Jimmy Kimmel thing combined with Google recognizing that it was wrong to have succumbed to the Biden administration and suppress free speech with respect to COVID, including free speech of the most uniquely qualified person to talk about it, who happens to be a U.S. senator, a libertarian, and a physician. I speak, of course, of Rand Paul. All this is bigger than Jimmy Kimmel, and as tragic as the murder of Charlie Kirk was, and as unpleasant as the response from the head of the Federal Communications Commission has been, all of this may redound to the benefit of free speech, the recognition that free means absent the government having nothing to do with it, free from the government. Maybe more people on both ends of the political spectrum, because of the events of the past 10 days, are now recognizing that.
Judge, thank you for laying that out so clearly and eloquently and so succinctly. Excellent job there, Judge. I've spent the first hour of this show this morning playing clips of Barry Goldwater talking about the Civil Rights Act. We played some clips of him talking about public accommodations, private accommodations, because in this discussion is this sidestep of discussion about what Charlie Kirk had said about the Civil Rights Act and whether or not Christians should be forced to bake a cake, whether Jews should be forced to bake a cake for a Nazi wedding, et cetera, public versus private, voluntary versus authoritarian, the government versus private property. And in regards to how it applies to this discussion, we're looking at YouTube saying, we acted at the behest of the Biden administration and banned people for their free speech, which is a constitutional level violation. Is it not, Judge?
Yes, because the government was involved. If Google wanted to suppress speech that it didn't like, it owns the bulletin board. It can do that to its heart's content. But when it does it at the behest of the government, and the same Republicans in the House that are now rejoicing at Google's revelations attempted to force Google to carry certain websites that it didn't want to carry. That's just as wrong. The government can't use a carrot. It can't use a stick. It can't evaluate the content of speech. It can't be involved in speech, period.
Correct. If YouTube was deciding to remove those accounts of their own volition, you could say it's a private platform. It can do it at once. But when the government steps in to censor, that's a completely different situation. It's akin to the Civil Rights Act. If a person doesn't want to allow blacks to sit at their lunch counter, it's abhorrent. I disagree with it, but it should be allowed. In the modern context, I may not agree with the Christian baker and their views on homosexuality being so sinful that they refuse to serve them at their private business, but that's their own views and their own personal it's a religious liberty question, I think, at that level. It rises to that level, which is, again, a constitutional protection. So free speech itself should protect the racist. Or I'm not saying that Christian man is a bigot. I don't know him or his heart, the Masterpiece Cake decision, but it would fundamentally protect bigotry. Doesn't the First Amendment also protect bigotry and speech that we hate, Judge?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is, now I'm going to sound like Murray Rothbard, the property rights argument is an easier one to make and to understand. Ownership or lawful occupation of property gives you the right to exclude for any reason, including the government. So if I'm the baker, I can exclude people from coming into my bake shop. I can exclude them from my website. I can exclude them from my phone call. That is an easier argument to make and to understand before you get into the First Amendment arguments of religion and speech. But the First Amendment arguments of religion and speech carry the day as well. In my view, Goldwater made a very, very principled argument against the Civil Rights Act of 64. Not that it restrained the states from making decisions based on race. The 14th Amendment was written to prevent the states from making those decisions, but because it reached into private property, an area that is not available for government regulation.
So, Judge, Barry Goldwater, he made the principled constitutional argument, and for that, he was punished by the voters, and our country was committed to decades of war, inflation, the Great Society, and the destruction of civil liberties and civil rights throughout all of those years of Lyndon Johnson inflicted on our country. And now I'm going to ask you, Judge, as I prepare to represent the devil pro bono and do a little legal work of my own here, I ask that you will pray the rosary, pray for my soul later after I begin this conversation, and I will now argue the statist authoritarian view when it comes to why Jimmy Kimmel and his temporary firing may have been within the law, maybe not constitutional, but legal, as the FCC has laid out rules, broadcast rules, handed down to us from the Democrats themselves. FDR created this institution and created rules of that institution, which are that you can't spread lies, misinformation, and disinformation on publicly licensed airwaves. Would the correct answer be to delete the FCC entirely? Of course. But Judge, did you put people in prison? I mean, maybe you're familiar with the prisoner's dilemma, which is if two thieves steal a diamond, get caught, and they choose not to betray one another, then they can both go and split the money for the diamond later. But if one of them betrays the other one, then they can go and get the whole profits of the diamond later. And therefore, Barry Goldwater had no incentive to tell the truth about what he believed about the Civil Rights Act. Perhaps the country would have been better off if he had lied to the American people and said what he needed to say in order to win, so that we could have prevented the disaster and terror and destruction of Democrat rule. In other words, what I'm saying here is Jimmy Kimmel, if there are no solutions, only trade-offs, if the FCC cracking down on Jimmy Kimmel is wrong, it is a smaller harm than what the Democrats have done to this country than the small harm that a Republican might do by threatening a simple broadcast license. What are your thoughts on that?
It's an interesting and quite frankly bizarre argument of taking the lesser of two evils. But if you believe in natural rights, if you believe that our rights are truly inalienable, then the government has no business being involved in speech whatsoever. And much of the Federal Communications Act of 1934 is unconstitutional, even though it has many times been upheld by the courts. I mean, one person's lie is another person's opinion. If he were to stand there and say, Charlie Kirk did not die, but a fake person who looked like him died, that would probably be a lie and probably be subject to suppression by the FCC. I don't think it should be. I think it should be subject to the will of the people watching. If you want to watch a crazy person claiming that an event that we know happened, in fact, didn't happen, you can watch it or you can change the channel. But under the law as it now exists, the FCC can jump in on things like that. But there's always a problem when the government evaluates the content of a speech, because the government hates and fears certain speech. The government's motivation is political. The government's motivation is not pure. The government is paternalistic and authoritarian, and it would rather tell us how to live. So the bottom line is, yes, we would have been better if Barry Goldwater had lied and got elected than tell the truth and lost. But I don't think the election in 1964 turned on the Civil Rights Act of 64. I don't think anybody could have defeated LBJ, because whoever had been JFK's vice president would have succeeded him in light of the emotion that followed the events of November 22nd, 1963. Emotions set in place by the Central Intelligence Agency.
Judge, you are literally the only person on this planet that I could have this kind of a level of nuanced and intelligent discussion with. This is why we call it Big Brain Time on Wednesdays with the judge, because again, that level of context and nuance, it doesn't exist on other shows. Your own show, Judging Freedom, perhaps, and of course here, but I very rarely can have that level of a discussion of nuance and someone who knows and understands the history. I guess what I'm getting at, Judge, is I've been reading some of your fellow Italian book. His name is Niccolo Machiavelli. I think you know him quite well. Another
Il Principe, the Prince.
Il Principe. I've been reading The Prince lately, Judge, because I'm trying to find a way, not just for liberty to win, but for liberty to survive in the United States. And what I keep coming back to is that it seems as if in that scenario that I discussed with you earlier, which is the game theory, in the scenario where you always do the right thing, in the scenario where the good guy plays by the rules, the good guy always loses. They did full-blown calculations on this, on what happens when you do the right thing every single time. And what happened was that the people who did the right thing every single time, or who always followed the rules, always lost the game. And the people, and interestingly enough, the people who always broke the rules, the people who were never honest, they always lost the game. But the people who won the game were the people who saw what the other person was doing, their opponent was doing, and they did it back to him. An eye for an eye, the copycat. So in other words, what I'm asking is, like, when you just said there, like, would it have been better if Barry Goldwater had lied, and if it had turned on the Civil Rights Act, if it were, would the country have been better off? If you're going to do a harm, then do the smaller harm. In some sense, I mean, we libertarians like to believe, well, there's an ideal scenario, which is to get rid of the FCC, but that is not a possible scenario. Even the Republicans don't want to do that. So if there's a harm that must be done, when a lot of libertarians, Judge, will say, well, when the Democrats are in power, they're going to do it to us. Well, they were going to do that anyway. That doesn't frighten me anymore. And so now if the FCC jawbones Jimmy Kimmel after watching what they did to us during COVID-19 and knowing that they're going to do it to us again, it doesn't bother me. The free speech is gone. The principle's gone. And therefore what we're left with is a knife fight. On some sense, Judge, we have to fight back.
Liberty waxes and wanes. I predict a resurgence of free speech in the short run because of these two events, Google and Jimmy Kimmel. Even the president, this character, Brandon Carr, who should be fired, is a product of Trump and the MAGA manifestation. But most of those people, it appears, condemned what he said because they may be the beer and pretzel set, but they understand they don't want the government telling them what they can hear and what they can say.
Judge, that is the most elitist thing I've ever heard come out of your mouth. And I think, here's the funny thing about that is that the people who understood that phrase that you just used are not the beer and pretzel set, so they don't get to be offended. If you understood that, you're not the beer and pretzel set. Somebody has to clip that, Judge. Please continue.
All right. Well, I mean, the rest is in the column that I wrote. I mean, government is evil. Government is the negation of liberty. You can't expect the government to evaluate the content of speech. That's why we have the First Amendment, because the people who created the country didn't trust the government. The guy who wrote the First Amendment also gave the most famous speech on the floor of the House of Representatives called the Bank Speech. Okay, it was about whether or not we could have a Federal Reserve. But in the Bank Speech, Madison outlines the inalienability of fundamental liberties. Chief among them is the freedom of speech.
You're 100% on your principle, Judge. It is important to get the principles right first. These days, now that I understand the principles, I'm ready to start bringing guns to knife fights. I'm ready to ensure that the Thomas Masseys of the world are protected. I'm ready to ensure that Senator Rand Paul will survive any primary challenge that may come at him from the right. And I'm ready to defend our free speech against those who don't believe in it. How can we live opposite an enemy that has done everything in their power to destroy free speech? How can we live amongst people in a country with people who are dedicated to the destruction of the values of this country, Judge? I mean, should we allow immigrants to come to this country who are explicitly stating that they will commit acts of terrorism here, that they will destroy the U.S. Constitution, that are planning on bombing the Statue of Liberty on Tuesday at 10 p.m.? There's some limits to what people can do or say in order to have order and stability and peace, and to be able to solve conflicts with nonviolence in this country. When you have terrorist groups like Antifa committed to acts of violence without some kind of proportionate response or disproportionate response, without bringing some kind of metaphorical gun to the knife fight, Judge, I fear that liberty will be lost to her enemies because her friends don't have the tactics or the skills to fight back. Do you understand sort of why I would feel that way?
Yeah, I don't share that that view. Your view, in my opinion, most respectfully, and I love you, leads to Donald Trump blowing up speedboats because he thinks they're about to commit a crime. Is a threat free speech? Well, if the person issuing the threat has the present apparent ability to carry it out, then the answer is it is not free speech. If they do not have the present apparent ability to carry it out, then it is free speech. The classic case is Brandenburg versus Ohio, which had many, many threats in it, issued in Hamilton County, Ohio, to be carried out in Washington, D.C. He didn't have the ability to carry out the threats, which is why his speech was protected. So speech that threatens is protected unless the speaker has the ability at the moment of the speech to carry out the threat. So Antifa can say whatever they want, but until they throw the first bomb, they're not violating the law. And the same with some nefarious person who may come into the country. I'm not going to fall down this Orwellian rat hole of punishing people before they commit a crime.
No, I understand exactly why you would feel that way, Judge. There is a concept of preemption, however, and to preempt is to come before something. So I don't have to wait for someone to actually shoot me. Them drawing the gun and pointing at me is enough for me to kill them, correct?
Yes.
So
yes.
So a preemptive strike, a truly preemptive strike, is lawful and moral and justifiable.
Well, if the person has the present apparent ability, I mean, if somebody says, I'm going to kill you, you can't kill them. But if they take out a gun, of course, you can shoot them. If they're 1,300 miles away from the United States in a speedboat that can go another 50 miles, no matter what's in that boat, you can't kill them.
What if they are 1,300 miles away and they have a nuclear weapon and they could attack us within an hour by pressing that button? Can we preempt them?
Well, that's a different story. That's not what happened.
No, but
you would have to declare war on the entity from which they came. You can't detonate the nuclear weapon because of the consequences of detonating it, unless you know the megatonnage.
You would have to declare war, but the president does have the War Powers Act, which allows him to attack within 72 hours, I believe. But then he has to go to Congress in order to justify it, right?
Yeah, I have to. I don't want to run from a fascinating conversation, but I have to be on air at 30 after the.
Sure, Judge. Please give us a plug for your show before you go.
Well, I have Pepe Escobar from Beijing on this afternoon. Tomorrow, I have Colonel Douglas McGregor and Professor Jeffrey Sachs on Trump's turnaround on Ukraine. Does he really think Ukraine can win this land back from Russia, or is this some sort of a negotiating technique? That's what we're talking about today.
Watch it on Judging Freedom. Judge Andrew Napolitano, the great Judge Andrew Napolitano, the only person that we could have these kinds of nuanced, historical, and philosophical discussions. Thank you, Judge, for being so generous with your time.
God love you, Austin. I'm already looking forward to next week's.
Thank you, Judge. Have a wonderful day. That's Judge Andrew Napolitano. Wednesdays, we call it big brain time, and that is big brain time. I'm afraid I can't see eye to eye with the judge. At some point, there has to be the ability to defend itself. If liberty cannot be defended because it has to wait for someone else to attack us, then we will lose. We will lose these fights for liberty. If we cannot pick up the weapons that were forged by our enemies to be used against us and use them against our enemies ourselves. That's how I feel about it. If someone 15,000 miles away gets a nuclear weapon and decides to get ready to press the launch button, it is not illegal, nor is it unconstitutional for the President of the United States to take them out before they do so. That's the War Powers Act. It is a requirement, though, that the president, after engaging in that strike, does go before Congress in order to justify that strike, and that's where Trump has been wrong. They should have to justify it. And then if there is a continued hostilities, then Congress, yes, must declare war after that. That's the Constitution. You don't wait for something. And if the judge and I had more time, he had said, yes, if the person pulls out the gun and points the gun at you, then you can fire back. But he said that it has to be that it's not free speech for them to say, I'm going to kill you and point a gun at you. Oh, he says, but if they don't have the capability to kill you, then it is free speech. Well, here's the problem with that. And I didn't have time to get into this with the judge. This is my thoughts. What if the gun is unloaded? What if the gun is unloaded? The person pulls out the gun and points the gun at me and says, I'm going to kill you. Now, does the person have the capability to kill me? No. Then that person is engaged in free speech, according to the judge's definition of it. That's just free speech. He doesn't have the capability to kill me. He's pointing the gun at me, but there's no bullets in the chamber. Well, then I guess it's free speech. Guess what? I'm going to pull out the gun and shoot him anyway. Because how am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to know? A threat's a threat, mother. Don't threaten me. Don't tread on me. I am the great Cornholio. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm Austin Petersen. Brandishing a gun is violence, says Drew. Not if you have a brandishing a gun is violence. No, it's not, according to the judge. If it has bullets in it and then you threaten someone with it, then that's a violation. But if it doesn't have bullets in it, then it's not violence. I'm sorry, but according to the Libertarian Zone rules on this one, apparently. And I love the judge, and I agree with him on almost everything. But I'm afraid to say that there doesn't seem to be much of a self-defense instinct in modern American libertarianism. What does this mean? What does this mean? What does it mean to you? I don't think many people in the United States who are American libertarians, I don't think they seem to understand what the hell does this mean? Is it don't tread on me, or is it tread on me harder, daddy? What is the point? What will the snake do if you tread on it? I ask my fellow libertarians, what does it mean? We'll talk about that with Adam Coleman when we get back. Founder of Wrong Speak Publication. He's got a strong opinion on free speech, and he's a black man, so he can talk about that Civil Rights Act where I can't because I am not a protected class. Oh, wait, I'm over 40. Yeah, protected classes, bitch. We'll be right back. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network.
As policymakers aim to reduce opioid prescribing for the 14th year in a row, they are promoting a search for non-addictive pain treatment alternatives. Although medical marijuana is increasingly viewed as a leading candidate, its advocates tend to grossly exaggerate its potential to replace opioid analgesics. That hyperbole threatens the welfare of pain patients, contributes to the backlash against marijuana legalization, and could undermine other forms of drug liberalization. A study published last July in the journal Pain epitomizes this tendency. University of Pittsburgh pain specialist Ajay Dewasan and his colleagues present what seems to be compelling evidence of marijuana's ability to broadly treat chronic pain. Unfortunately, the study has a methodological flaw that renders its main conclusion meaningless. For a technical discussion of this flaw, please see the letter to the editor I wrote with Chad D. Collis and the author's response. Wasan et al. Used an innovative statistical technique to compare chronic pain patients who received marijuana recommendations with chronic pain patients who received standard pharmaceuticals, including opioids. They found that the marijuana patients reported significantly higher reductions in pain, but the two groups were much too different to justify any conclusions from that comparison. Although the author's statistical technique can often make causal comparisons between largely different groups, the method still requires minimal similarities between the populations. In this study, 432 of the 440 subjects in the marijuana group, 98.1%, had a diagnosis for neuropathic pain, one of the few conditions marijuana is known to alleviate. By contrast, 1,003 of the 814 subjects in the standard treatment group, 14.8%, suffered from neuropathic pain. The upshot is that just 8 patients in the marijuana group were statistically weighted to represent 6,911 individuals in the standard care group, the the ones with other forms of chronic pain. In other words, 1.8% of the marijuana group was used to model patients without neuropathic pain, who accounted for 85.1% of the standard treatment group. That selection bias fatally compromises the study's findings. Wasson et al. Responded to this critique by highlighting that they used pain detect categories to quantify neuropathic pain instead of International Classification of Diseases, 10th revision, ICD-10 codes. But as we explained in our letter with the study data, pain detect poorly predicts neuropathic pain severity. To illustrate our main point, consider two different groups of people with arm pain. One group is treated with hard casts, while the other gets nothing. If almost everyone in the group treated with casts had a broken arm, we'd expect that group to eventually report improved outcomes. But if the vast majority of the other group is suffering not from fractures but from burns or abrasions, we wouldn't expect casting to reliably help that group. It would be reckless to conclude, based on a comparison of those two groups, that casts should be used to heal arms that aren't broken. Statistical malpractice is common within the medical marijuana literature. Academic advocates have long pushed marijuana to treat conditions such as anorexia, ADHD, autism, and even cancer. They used initial, low-quality research to promote state-level legalization of medical marijuana to treat these conditions across the United States. But more recent reviews reveal that marijuana's medical applications are much narrower than the wide range of conditions that can justify a doctor's recommendation under many state laws. When it comes to chronic pain, marijuana does have some promise in treating discomfort caused by neuropathy and fibromyalgia, but attempting to use it for conditions that require powerful narcotics is apt to harm patients. The push for pain reliever substitutes comes amid continuing federal actions to artificially reduce the supply of prescription opioids through manufacturing quotas. Those restrictions have caused a shortage of opioid analgesics, leaving doctors unable to find appropriate pain medications for their patients. Because over-the-counter medications like acetaminophen, Tylenol, and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, like aspirin and ibuprofen cause major organ damage when used for prolonged periods, the lack of an adequate opioid supply has made it difficult for doctors to find safe drugs for chronic pain. Contrary to popular belief, opioids have very few negative effects on the body when taken as directed. If a marijuana derivative could work as an all-purpose pain reliever, it might be the only reasonable opioid replacement for chronic pain. But the evidence seems to be stacked against marijuana's effectiveness at treating pain, except in limited circumstances. Prohibitionists have long argued that there is insufficient scientific evidence to justify legalizing marijuana for medical or recreational use. Studies with glaring methodological flaws, like Wasson et al. Series, provide them with ammunition to shoot down the entire body of cannabis research. This situation is especially frustrating because there is legitimate evidence supporting marijuana's therapeutic benefits for some conditions. When advocates oversell weak studies, they risk undermining stronger evidence and sabotaging future liberalization efforts, especially for other drugs. Prohibitionists argue that medical marijuana is a strategy aimed at achieving de facto recreational access, and they have a point. The evidence indicates that marijuana can't treat most of the conditions that justify referrals under state laws, which are often written so broadly that basically anyone who wants marijuana can gain access. Medical marijuana advocates should demand better research. As the war on opioid prescribing continues, they should not promote inadequate substitutes to treat pain. Although cannabis derivatives do have a place in medicine, promoting marijuana as a panacea hurts patients and undermines the credibility of drug policy reformers.
I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I have many friends and family members on the other side who I love and remain close to.
I didn't hear, and I'm sorry. Here's what Kimmel said. The MAGA gang is desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them. Oh, where could people have gotten the idea that we were pointing any fingers there? I wonder. Interesting. All right, it's a fight over free speech. Let's have one of its primary defenders on the show this morning. Adam Coleman, the founder of Wrong Speak Publication. We've been talking this morning about the Civil Rights Act. We've been talking about free speech and civil liberties. We've been talking about game theory. We've been talking about don't tread on me and what it really means. Let's get a man who knows a thing or two about it. Adam Coleman, joining us live on the Wake Up America show. He is a protected class, so he can talk about the Civil Rights Act too, I imagine. Good morning, Adam. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm protected too now because I'm over 40, so I'm old.
Okay. I wasn't expecting that as an intro. Oh, man.
Glad to have you on the show. So, first of all, broad overview, your reaction to the Jimmy Kimmel firing, non-firing.
Well, first thing is I'm immune to people who act like they're crying, but you see no tears. Mm-hmm. So that was a very bad acting job that he just pulled there. I also think that I don't think he's a heinous human being. I think maybe in his personal life, he may be a decent guy. I'm sure he might be telling the truth. He has plenty of friends on both sides. But what I will say is that he is amongst many people, especially of the Hollywood types, who live and die by politics, who see politics as a game and not, and they don't see the humans who are behind it. They lump the worst of their opposition into being everyone who has a differing viewpoint than themselves. And so sometimes you get carried away and you get caught up and you fall into these traps. And he opened his mouth and said the thing that he said, which you highlighted before. So, him going back on air honestly doesn't shock me, especially when they say indefinitely. Like, it's a very loose term. Who knows what that means? So I guess like my broader viewpoint when it comes to the FCC and things like that, people forget that the FCC even exists. But it's because we're all glued to the internet these days, and we've been watching cable television, which is not regulated in the same fashion as ABC would be. So what the FCC can do is kind of a gray area. Is the FCC when they're making, I don't even want to say threats, like we could look into this kind of stuff, which who knows if they actually do or don't. I don't know how that falls into the line of speech, because it is something that they technically may be able to do and have always been able to do. And they have the allowance to. We don't want porn on ABC. We don't want cursing on ABC. But the expectation outside of those airwaves is different.
We're speaking to Adam Coleman this morning, author of many books, two of which you can see behind him. And he is the founder of Wrong Speak Publication this morning, fresh from his 2-week vacation, joining us live here on the show this morning. We're glad to have him here. Adam, now the question of what the FCC actually did here. They call this jawboning. Here's the words that I pulled from the commissioner. It says that we can do this the easy way or the hard way, which of course sounds like government coercion. Do you think it's dangerous when government regulators even hint at influencing what comedians can say or not?
Yes. This is one of those areas where, and I'm going to answer your question, but it's one of those weird areas where we use comedians to sort of give news and information and potentially give bad information by saying it was a joke because there's an applause line next to it. So, The Daily Show is a classic thing where they're, no, I'm not giving news, even though every day you're giving current events and what's going on. And Jimmy Kimmel doing much of the same thing. and then says, no, these are jokes. These are 100% jokes. So there's always this kind of game when it comes to what is news information, is valid information. Tom Brokaw and all these other people, is he the same as Jimmy Kimmel? I'm sorry, is Tom Brokaw the same as Jimmy Kimmel as far as giving information to the public? I don't know. These are kind of like weird areas. But there are FCC regulations around purposefully giving false information. And so that is hard to prove. And that's why, I don't know how much of this is a speech thing. I will say, politically speaking, it doesn't necessarily make the FCC look good, but no one likes the FCC anyways. So,
well, people, they like it enough to keep it around, because if libertarians like myself were in charge, we would abolish licensing in the FCC. But that's not what the left would ever do, and most Republicans aren't going to do that either, Adam. So, yeah. Frank Herbert, he wrote Children of Dune. He had this famous quote people use. He said, "When I am weaker than you, I ask for freedom, because that is according to your principles. When I am stronger than you, I take away your freedom, because that is according to my principles." Adam, how can free speech possibly survive when the true defenders of free speech, people like ourselves, have to contend with an enemy who will ask us for freedom when they are out of power, but who will take away our freedom when they are in power? How can we possibly stand and fight against an opponent that doesn't play by any of the rules that we as a civil society and a Western society, a stable, classical, Republican society, have concocted for ourselves? How can we coexist with people like that? How can we possibly fight back against people who have given themselves tools that we ourselves would deny ourselves the ability to use, such as the FCC and the jawboning?
Well, I don't have a good answer for that, because it's a big issue, and there's no simple answer to it. The good thing is that, so to speak, the good thing is that obviously most people don't have a TV show. Most people aren't being regulated by the FCC. And actually, because of the heavy-handedness of the FCC, because of the, what's the word I'm looking for? The gatekeeping when it comes to the public sector and information, all these different things. That is why people go towards non-FCC regulated avenues. That's why people are going towards social media, using the internet. Now, I will say this is why we should fight to make sure that the internet stays an unregulated space. And we don't have to deal with these particular issues within the United States. So that, I think that's incredibly important, that we don't go the route of the FCC. But I do believe that there should be certain avenues where there should be some sort of protections. If any child, theoretically speaking, can turn on NBC, we should have some expectations that there's not going to be cursing left and right, that there should be some areas where the American public could expect a relatively clean airwaves. Those things I'm fine with, right? They have some guidelines and things of that nature. It's these other areas that become a bit murky. How do you prove that Jimmy Kimmel purposely gave bad information, or that he just saw some stuff on Facebook, or one of his writers made a bad joke and took some stuff because they're propagandized just like half the country is? So, that's the area where I'm mostly concerned with. Is trying to prove someone's intention.
I agree with you on the question of obscenity. And I know that you said you don't have a good answer to my question. And I still want to press it just a little bit, because I'm also searching for a good answer to this one. And I'm wondering if I can get you to agree with me on some level that the FCC could be, perhaps should be, perhaps even just temporarily used in such a way so as to be able to defend free speech from its enemies. It's kind of like, what I'm really talking about here is kind of like the strategy for liberty, in a sense, Adam. And we're working this out together. I don't know the good answer, but I know that in a scenario where two people are at odds with one another, if one person constantly betrays the other person, and the other person always is loyal and always protects the rights and liberties of the other person, and the other person never does, the bad guy will always win in that scenario. So, I mean, how do we defend free speech from her enemies, Adam, while denying ourselves the ability, like the tools that have been created by our by its enemies to be used against people like us? Take Google and YouTube, for example. Joe Biden was in office. He used the government to browbeat YouTube and Google to demand that people like yourself and myself and others, I don't know what happened to you on YouTube. I've been demonetized. I know many people who had their accounts completely deleted. The Democrats did that while they were in office. Now that Trump's in office, they're backing off. But I know that the next time a Democrat takes over, they're just going to do the same thing to us. How do we fight? How do we fight that fight, Adam, without necessarily becoming what we want to destroy? These are partisan fights. These are principled fights, but these are also strategic and tactical fights as well, if you know what I mean.
I don't know if this is the answer, like the ultimate answer, but I will say one thing that makes a lot of people move in America is when you mess with their money. Sometimes you got to sue. You have to use the law against people. When we saw them cutting the breasts off of children in the name of being trans, I said the only way to truly solve this, you got to sue. Like, you can wait for the cultural shift, but you got to sue. And maybe that's the type of thing that we have to do. You know, we were talking about the FCC, but using Google as an example, deterring them from going towards that avenue by suing them into oblivion, not necessarily to have them go out of business, because they won't, because they're behemoths, but to disincentivize this particular action of censoring the average American for having an alternative viewpoint in a space where all viewpoints are allowed, even the viewpoints that I think are disgusting, they're still allowed. And also, I do think that if Google says, hey, here are the rules, and this is what we're going to do moving forward, then I tacitly understand those rules. And if my viewpoints aren't allowed on Google, I think that's a bad thing, but fine, I'll go somewhere else and use my viewpoints. The issue that I have is when they change the rules mid-game and they punish someone like yourself who's been on their platform for years, and all of a sudden they do it. And what makes it worse is that it wasn't even Google's thinking to do it. It was coming from an outside entity like the government, giving them some sort of pressure to do so. So, you know, I think that's ultimately the big problem, is that they're constantly changing the rules. No one knows what is acceptable. And it's not even, and the reason it's incoherent is because it's not even coming from them. It's coming from somewhere else. So they're just taking a broad brush and just banning people off of Facebook and kicking them off of YouTube and, basically shadow banning unclean thoughts.
How do you feel about the government declaring Antifa to be a terrorist group?
Well, I don't have a problem with it, in the sense that they organize, they are part of violent factions. It may not necessarily be that every single person who is part of Antifa commits a violent act, but they are part of an organization that openly does this, that conceals their identity while doing illegal behaviors. They do what I would call mostly soft terrorism, right? So they're not blowing up buildings, but they are massive disruptors, and they can lead to people being severely harmed, and that has happened. So are they terroristic? Yes. If we're to go by the definition of what terrorism is, then I would say yes, they are terrorists.
Adam, I mentioned the Civil Rights Act when we were coming in. In the first hour of this show, I was playing clips of Barry Goldwater talking in 1964 about why he opposed the Civil Rights Act. And we were having this discussion about public accommodations versus private accommodations. One of the reasons that Charlie Kirk is getting attacked by the left after his assassination is they're saying that he wanted to overturn the Civil Rights Act, which I can't find any evidence of him saying that. But if I ever get assassinated, Adam, then the left can they can play this clip where I can say that I think we should overturn the Civil Rights Act. Not the parts of the Civil Rights Act where the government can't discriminate, but the parts where we have so bastardized the law so as to force a Christian baker now to bake a wedding cake for a gay couple. We have protected classes in this country. You're a protected class. I'm one now that I'm 40 years old, but 4 years ago, I wasn't a member of a protected class. How do you feel about the concept of protected classes in this country? How do you feel about the concept of your ancestors not being able to sit at lunch counters, private businesses, until the government stepped in and said they should have to accommodate people of your particular genetic lineage? Give us your thoughts on that and prepare to be canceled.
It's interesting. I tend not to think about the past in this particular way because hindsight is 2020. And there's always going to be things that some sort of context that I don't understand. That was the motive for whatever happened in the past. I will say that having the government enforce, the problem wasn't just that said diner doesn't want black people there. The problem is that, because theoretically they can do that now. I can go into some diner in Mississippi and they can make me uncomfortable and tell me to leave. What's the likeliness of me trying to sue them or calling the police and saying, hey, they won't let me in here? Is incredibly unlikely. The problem is when the government enforces separation of people. That to me was the major crime with Jim Crow laws, is that it forced a privatization separation as well. It forced that you can only compete for these particular people, which is anti-free market. If only blacks can go here, let's say I'm a black business owner, I can only serve blacks. Well, the black population is a small population, so you're limiting my capitalism, and that's all coming from the government and a local government basically stating this. So I think it was the big issue was the utilization of local government to separate people, forcing people not to be able to compete, forcing people to stay away from other people. Like it created a societal schism, to say the least. And on top of that, it created what I would almost say like black market power with organizations like the KKK to enforce these particular things. So, I have a lot of issues when it comes to the government getting involved in certain things, but I think it was the right thing to do to have the federal government step in and say these laws are unconstitutional.
Would you say that today that the concept of protected classes is now counterproductive to what it was at the time?
Yes, because my concept, I say this as a person who was born in 1984, not 1954, but my understanding is that the issue was that we weren't on a level playing field. The issue was that some were being propped up and some were being held down. And so that my idea is no more of that. No one's propped up and no one is held down. We're supposed to have a level playing field. How can you have a level playing field if some are being protected from theoretical harm? That to me doesn't make any sense. We treat each other equally. Full stop. That's it.
Okay. Adam Coleman, Wrong Speak Publication. It's all Greek to me. Hey, loved the pictures of your vacation and the little mini documentary that you did of you and your wife. People can watch that documentary about the love that you have for your beautiful wife and your relationship over on your X account, which is wrong_speak. But Adam, is there anything that we missed today in this conversation that you want to share? Or is there anything else that you'd like to plug before we let you go today, friend?
Yeah, the same video can be found on YouTube as well. You can watch it on 4K on YouTube. Same handle, youtube.com/@wrong_speak. I plan on doing more short documentaries, political documentaries and things of that nature, as well as writing.
Adam, I really appreciate the time that you spend with us, brother. Thank you very much. And we hope that you have a wonderful day. Again, we'll follow you over on X at wrong_speak. My wife, Stephanie, is over in the chat and she says, wow, that sounds like a good documentary. So thank you. Well, it looks like we're going to be watching it together now. I get to watch it a second time. Have a good one.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Bye.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
There we go. That is the discussion. We've raised $98 towards the $100 bonus content goal. Ordinarily, I would say, close, but not close enough. But today, I will say close enough. And I will trust that someone will donate $2 in the next 10 minutes. Because now that I will say, officially, unofficially, the second phase of the bonus content is unlocked. So that you guys can have Guillermo. And I'll ask somebody to please donate $2 in a Rumble rant to make us hit that $100 level. Nice, Joey Maddo, Joni Rankin. We're going to the Wake Up America show's special guest. It's now time for us to go to our breakfast theater segment where Guillermo from the Jimmy Kimmel show will be here in all of his Mexican glory on the Wake Up America show. Don't go away. We'll be right back. We're going to go to a very brief, got to make the nut. Thank you, Andy. We got to make the nut, got to make that nut. So we made the nut. It's the bonus content for me. Yo ho, the bonus content for me. Thank you, M. Osborne. We'll be right back, guys. Don't go away. Hola, everybody. It's me, Guillermo. You know, the guy who stand next to Jimmy Kimmel and clap even when joke is not funny? Yes, that's me. I clap, I smile, I drink tequila, and then Jimmy say, Guillermo, you are comedy gold. And now, Jimmy is back, baby. Back in the air after his little vacation. No, not vacation. Suspension. Like when I drink too much. When my Tio drink too much and he gets suspended from driving. Same thing, but with jokes. You see, Jimmy, he make the joke about Charlie Kirk and woo boy, yee, the MAGA gang, they no laugh. They say, Jimmy, you are terrible. Jimmy, you are spreading hate. And then the FCC guy, Senor Brendan Carr, he say, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Ay, Dios mío, that sounds like the cartel, the FCC cartel. So Jimmy, he gets suspended by Disney. You know Disney, they own everything. Mickey Mouse, Star Wars, Jimmy's paycheck. And then they say, Jimmy, go home, sit in the corner, think about what you did. But don't worry, Jimmy don't learn nothing. He's sitting in his pool, eating In-N-Out burgers, writing more jokes about Trump's hair. He say, I'm going to come back stronger than ever, I say. And I say, Jimmy, please, no, I want to keep my job. You know what's funny? You know what's funny? When conservatives get silenced, when they get banned from YouTube or canceled on Twitter, Hollywood, they clap like seals. Bravo, bravo, cancel them. More caviar. But when Jimmy get time out, suddenly it's the end of free speech. Ay, pobrecito, Jimmy. Someone bring him a tissue. Oh, please. Me, I just post on Instagram. We are back, full of love. Took me 3 hours to write that. My friends, English is hard, and also tequila is strong, but the fans, they love it. Rosie O'Donnell say, kill it tonight, Jeremy. And I think, hey, Rosie, please, no more killing jokes. That's what got us on trouble. And Jimmy, he posts picture of Norman Lear, the TV legend. Norman is gone now, God rest him. But Jimmy act like Norman is his guardian angel. Norman look down from heaven and say, Jimmy, please, write one new joke. Just one, please. Please, Jimmy. So now Jimmy is back. Disney said they have thoughtful conversations with him. That's corporate talk for Jimmy. Shut your mouth and read the cue cards. And Jimmy say, yes, sir. I will insult MAGA, but more carefully this time. But let me tell you the truth, amigos. Jimmy doesn't care about free speech. He only cares about his speech. He defends comedians when they get in trouble, but only the ones who make fun of conservatives. You, me, anyone else? He wants us quiet. He wants us canceled. Free speech in Hollywood is like 3 tequila, free drinks at the bar. They say it for everybody, but when you ask for one, suddenly the tab is closed. So see, Jimmy is back, full of love. But me, I am back, full of tequila. And maybe, just maybe, I clap for Jimmy tonight. Or maybe I clap for Charlie Kirk. Or maybe I clap for the audience who finally see the joke. The joke is on Hollywood. Gracias. Thank you very much. I am Guillermo, and I approve this message mostly because I cannot read it. And that is why you watch the Wake Up America show. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to everybody who's stood with us when nobody else did. When you've got 100 people watching your live show in the mornings regularly, you have an army. That's what it takes. The challenge for today is if you cut any clips from the show, make sure that you upload them on X. I'd also like to ask any of you who are watching the show right now who want to be a part of our community, it's time to step up and step in to the fight for liberty. Join the For Liberty Network at forlibertynetwork.com. That's the number 4, libertynetwork.com. If you go to forlibertynetwork.com, that's going to take you to our bonus content. And if you go to our Discord there, you're going to join our excellent community of like-minded patriots and freedom fighters. So make sure you're grabbing clips, uploading them over on X, tagging me in them, and then we will repost your clips. Thank you so much to everybody who was watching the Wake Up America show this morning and enjoying the Barry Goldwater. Thank you to everyone who gave financially. And thank you to everyone who still stands for liberty, even when it's unpopular. We'll be back tomorrow on the Wake Up America show, and that's on the For Liberty Network.
I came out favoring a Democratic candidate over a Republican candidate because the Republican candidate was a candidate of the religious right. And the religious right scares the hell out of me. They have no place in politics.
The separation of church and state.
That's right. It even goes beyond that. It was old Tom Jefferson that had us separate the church and state. And while I have nothing against a minister being a member of Congress, he should leave the Bible at the front door and just carry it around in his head. And don't try to preach and practice religion in the halls of Congress.
As policymakers aim to reduce opioid prescribing for the 14th year in a row, they are promoting a search for non-addictive pain treatment alternatives. Although medical marijuana is increasingly viewed as a leading candidate, its advocates tend to grossly exaggerate its potential to replace opioid analgesics. That hyperbole threatens the welfare of pain patients, contributes to the backlash against marijuana legalization, and could undermine other forms of drug liberalization. A study published last July in the journal Pain epitomizes this tendency. University of Pittsburgh pain specialist Ajay Dewasan and his colleagues present what seems to be compelling evidence of marijuana's ability to broadly treat chronic pain. Unfortunately, the study has a methodological flaw that renders its main conclusion meaningless. For a technical discussion of this flaw, please see the letter to the editor I wrote with Chad D. Collis and the author's response. Wasson et al. Used an innovative statistical technique to compare chronic pain patients who received marijuana recommendations with chronic pain patients who received standard pharmaceuticals, including opioids. They found that the marijuana patients reported significantly higher reductions in pain, but the two groups were much too different to justify any conclusions from that comparison. Although the author's statistical technique can often make causal comparisons between largely different groups, the method still requires minimal similarities between the populations. In this study, 432 of the 440 subjects in the marijuana group, 98.1%, had a diagnosis for neuropathic pain, one of the few conditions marijuana is known to alleviate. By contrast, 1,003 of the 814 subjects in the standard treatment group, 14.8%, suffered from neuropathic pain. The upshot is that just 8 patients in the marijuana group were statistically weighted to represent 6,911 individuals in the standard care group, the ones with other forms of chronic pain. In other words, 1.8% of the marijuana group was used to model patients without neuropathic pain, who accounted for 85.1% of the standard treatment group. That selection bias fatally compromises the study's findings. Wasson et al. Responded to this critique by highlighting that they used pain detect categories to quantify neuropathic pain instead of International Classification of Diseases, 10th revision, ICD-10 codes. But as we explained in our letter with the study data, pain detect poorly predicts neuropathic pain severity. To illustrate our main point, consider 2 different groups of people with arm pain. One group is treated with hard casts, while the other gets nothing. If almost everyone in the group treated with casts had a broken arm, we'd expect that group to eventually report improved outcomes. But if the vast majority of the other group is suffering not from fractures but from burns or abrasions, we wouldn't expect casting to reliably help that group. It would be reckless to conclude, based on a comparison of those 2 groups, that casts should be used to heal arms that aren't broken. Statistical malpractice is common within the medical marijuana literature. Academic advocates have long pushed marijuana to treat conditions such as anorexia, ADHD, autism, and even cancer. They used initial, low-quality research to promote state-level legalization of medical marijuana to treat these conditions across the United States. But more recent reviews reveal that marijuana's medical applications are much narrower than the wide range of conditions that can justify a doctor's recommendation under many state laws. When it comes to chronic pain, marijuana does have some promise in treating discomfort caused by neuropathy and fibromyalgia, but attempting to use it for conditions that require powerful narcotics is apt to harm patients. The push for pain reliever substitutes comes amid continuing federal actions to artificially reduce the supply of prescription opioids through manufacturing quotas. Those restrictions have caused a shortage of opioid analgesics, leaving doctors unable to find appropriate pain medications for their patients. Because over-the-counter medications like acetaminophen, Tylenol, and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, like aspirin and ibuprofen cause major organ damage when used for prolonged periods. The lack of an adequate opioid supply has made it difficult for doctors to find safe drugs for chronic pain. Contrary to popular belief, opioids have very few negative effects on the body when taken as directed. If a marijuana derivative could work as an all-purpose pain reliever, it might be the only reasonable opioid replacement for chronic pain. But the evidence seems to be stacked against marijuana's effectiveness at treating pain, except in limited circumstances. Prohibitionists have long argued that there is insufficient scientific evidence to justify legalizing marijuana for medical or recreational use. Studies with glaring methodological flaws, like Wasson et al. Series, provide them with ammunition to shoot down the entire body of cannabis research. This situation is especially frustrating because there is legitimate evidence supporting marijuana's therapeutic benefits for some conditions. When advocates oversell weak studies, they risk undermining stronger evidence and sabotaging future liberalization efforts, especially for other drugs. Prohibitionists argue that medical marijuana is a strategy aimed at achieving de facto recreational access, and they have a point. The evidence indicates that marijuana can't treat most of the conditions that justify referrals under state laws, which are often written so broadly that basically anyone who wants marijuana can gain access. Medical marijuana advocates should demand better research. As the war on opioid prescribing continues, they should not promote inadequate substitutes to treat pain. Although cannabis derivatives do have a place in medicine, promoting marijuana as a panacea hurts patients and undermines the credibility of drug policy reformers.
Here at Alligator Alcatraz, the fence keeps them in. But slip up, and you're on my plate.
Looks like breakfast is making a run for it. We got 3 hot meals trying to check out early from Alligator Alcatraz.
They can splash, they can sprint, but there's no escaping Alligator Alcatraz. Caught 2.
The third? Huh. The swamp's got its own way of catching runaways.
Mama was wrong. Gators don't need toothbrushes. Just an honest job making America great again.
Imagine bringing George Washington back to life. Just to explain that in 2025, men can get pregnant, waving an American flag might offend someone, and our government is $34 trillion in debt. But that's not all, George. We have drag queen story hour for toddlers. Pronouns are mandatory. And Harvard can't define woman. Oh. And we send billions to Ukraine but can't fix potholes in Ohio. You know, just normal modern empire stuff. I'm sure he'd be totally cool with it. Right after he finishes reloading. He didn't cross the Delaware for this nonsense, but you can carry on the fight with gear that would have made King George cry. Shop bold, shop free, shop for liberty.